Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're going to be watching a fan-made League of Legends movie. It's not a movie. It's about 25 minutes long, but still, the lore of Riven is brutal. I think it's going to be cool. We looked at it a little bit. It looks like he just kind of explained some of the story. It looks pretty fun.
Yeah, it was recommended by one of you guys. So thank you very much. We really appreciate all of your suggestions. We take it in consideration and we try to watch as much as possible. And here's the one that we picked for this video.
Awesome. Let's get it.
Okay, I'm glad we're familiar with this map now.
So we're going to
To the south of the Damascian Argent Mountains rests a small farming
Travail.
village known as Travail.
So this must be where Riven's from, right?
Yep.
It was here that a girl named Riven was born, but to no family. Her father had been a soldier who was slain in a nameless battle, and her mother passed as a result of the girl's stubborn birth.
Oh, shit.
This village, located in the forgotten corner of Noxus, was everything its mother state was not. Quiet, tedious, and uneventful, a stark contrast to the Noxian ambition. Left to work the
Honestly,
Trabalan
that sounds
farms as an-
great in this universe. Quiet, peaceful, uneventful. Like there's always a war here. So I would live in that place.
Yeah, it's not normal. Although, to be Riven, you were born, your mother passed away when you were born, which not ideal.
I guess. No,
orphan,
that's
Riven
for
longed
sure.
for a sense of family, specifically a sense of acceptance. A longing she saw could be fulfilled in the brother and sisterhood of war. Taken in at an early age by warband conscriptors, Riven was more than fit for combat after years of labour on the land. Impressing her superiors would prove to be easy with her exceptional capacity to work and physical strength. Despite only being in her teen years, Riven could already wield a longsword taller and even heavier than her.
Guts?
Right? At the family gods?
Guts was born. He killed his mother when he died, or when he was born. She passed away as well. She's got the
Do you
curse.
think they took inspiration in Guts?
I mean, she's got a big ass sword, a heap of iron.
Very physicality.
So I'm wondering, did the creator of this, did he actually draw all of this then?
I don't know.
That'd be pretty sick if he did.
I don't know.
Herself.
Like, do you mean the creator
Capturing the
of
attention
what?
of the
Like
general.
Oh,
this video?
yeah. Rival. Did Rival draw all of this?
What I think it happened, and I could be wrong, is that there's probably already like a comic, and then he like grabbed the images, put them together, animate them, and then he was just narrating.
That could be, yeah.
Generals, Riven joined the Fury Company, an expert group of Noxian soldiers, making especially close bonds to three war sisters,
Mercenaries.
Tenef, Arel, and Marit. Riven would become a weapon of Noxus, one that was forged alongside her sisters in the intense heat of battle. Pledging her strength to the militaristic empire, she thrived off the resolve of those around her and finally felt like she belonged. She finally had a family. Her patriotism, coupled with her competence on the battlefield, allowed her to gain further recognition, even extending to acknowledgement from the Grand General of Noxus himself, Borum Darkwill. But in the shadows, the General was piecing together a plan. Recognizing a tool that could be harnessed, Darkwill rewarded Riven's alignment to the Noxian cause with a weapon of war, a colossal dark steel blade that was imbued with runic energy by a sorceress of his advisory, LeBlanc of the Black Rose.
Oh shit. She made her weapon?
Oh shit.
That's fucking sick, dude.
LeBlanc herself?
Not privy to his counsel, Darkwill was planning an invasion to the east, to the spiritual and peaceful land of Ionia. Unlike the expansionist Noxus, Ionia was an intrinsic state, seeking harmony and union between land and inhabitants alike. Unbeknownst to the Ionians, Noxus had already begun making its first moves with spies disguised as merchants. Infiltrating the First Lands, their job was to scout out points of weakness and abuse the trust and placid nature of the friendly locals. Through the relayed intel, Noxus had set its occupancy effort in motion, sending heavy resources to the western coast of Ionia, to the shores of Navori Province and the Phalor Island.
I remember Necrit in some of his videos, he um, always talked about this battle where Noxus tried to invade Ionia, but I don't think it quite ever worked.
They succeeded.
Yeah.
No.
Thought to be a peaceful and weak country, however, Ionia wasn't giving an inch. Led by the newly appointed captain, Zan Aurelia, the Ionian warforce, treacherous landscape, and magics of the people bore ceaseless resistance to the Noxian effort. Elsewhere, a Piltovan chemist known as Singed had been gaining notoriety from the development of his alchemical weapons.
We know Singed.
As he was vocally opposed
do
to
know him.
Piltover's growing usage of Hextech, Singed was ridiculed and kicked out of the University of Piltover, stemming his resource flow and consequently his weapons research. This forced him to become desperate for funding to continue his developments, so he headed for the Piltovan criminal underbelly Zorn. Shortly after, when he was offered by Noxian warlords to develop a weapon, he had little to consider. Looking to use his outsider knowledge to finally break the Ionian defences, an ambitious Noxian commander, Emerson, personally employed Singed to create a weapon of genocidal magnitude.
God damn. What did he make? Genocidal magnitude?
Expansion, no matter
Is
the
it
cost.
maybe Warwick?
After a lengthy stalemate
No.
against the Ionians, the Fury Company was to escort another
Did
warband through
Warwick
Navoria.
in Arcane?
Led by Commander Emerson, the Noxians were tasked with testing the new chemical weapons. The Fury Company's job was to get the escort to its point of effect safely. Normally one of unwavering obedience to the cause, ceasing at no kill nor question, Riven couldn't help but feel something was off about this mission, and as if her unease wasn't enough, the resistance from the enemy wasn't letting up. Unfamiliar to the Ionian weather, a sudden rainstorm caught the Noxians off guard, stranding both parties in a brutal mudslide.
Oh, shit.
Emerging from the surrounding landscape, an Ionian ambush bore down on the warbands. With no way to retaliate and no way out, Riven called to Commander Emerson for help. In a thrash of rain, mud, comrades and enemies alike, she thought the call couldn't be heard, until she noticed a faint glowing light descending from the ridgeline that overlooked the battle. As if in slow motion, a single flaming arrow punctured the cargo of the escort wagon. A piercing hiss cut through the battle sound, like a gas bottle that had just broke its valve. Instinctively, Riven raised her greatsword in front of her body. Chemical flames erupted from the wagon, ripping through the battle and engulfing everything it touched.
Jesus.
Protected by her runic magic, Riven could do nothing but watch helplessly as the almost demonic flames immersed her entire field of vision, devouring the only people she had called family and her foes in a sweeping blanket of death.
Are those the same runes that
One shot.
protected Ambessa? Do you think?
I'm thinking that this. Yes, I think those are the
It
same.
has to be because I mean Ambessa was working with the Black Rose, and that was like that's where those runes
Came from
came from, right?
Noxus.
Yeah, it came from
Yeah.
what's her name?
The chemical fire explosion was over in a flash, leaving in its wake a toxic
LeBlanc?
mist that
Yeah.
was so potent any who breathed it in were met with a burning far harsher than any the fire could have inflicted.
Holy shit!
A gruesome, melting
She's
mess
alone
of
now.
writhing Ionian and Noxian soldiers lay bare for
Yo.
Riven
Oh
to
my
witness,
gosh.
still protected by her runic magic. Almost as if
This
she
is
was
giving me
awakened,
You can almost
major
feel the
intentions of
pain.
Noxus was
vibes.
suddenly apparent. There was no cost too great.
Like the manga.
In an instant,
Yeah.
the utter annihilation before her had crushed her heart, beliefs, and ideals all at once.
Jesus.
Racked with guilt and betrayal, Riven fled the battlefield, still unable to process what had just happened, the only remnant being the sword that had saved her life. With no stomach to serve a nation that had betrayed her and her only family, Riven abandoned Noxus and began to hate the blade as it was the only thing that still remained of her past allegiance. She desperately tried to shatter the sword, but its runic potency was too strong and it couldn't be broken.
She
Left to
keep it?
ponder her
Yeah.
guilt and wander the unfamiliar land, Riven was purposeless and haunted. Eventually, she came across a small village near central Ionia. As was the way of the Ionians, she was greeted with
Okay,
open
that
arms,
is just
the
such a
locals providing
cool.
refuge. A Windblade master by the
like
name
a
of
little
Elder
town.
Suma took a particular interest in Riven and her weapon, that he would come to learn was a shackle of her guilt.
Huh.
Wanting to teach her as much as possible, Elder Suma took her in, showing her the ways of his Windblade techniques. Still fueled by an
What?
intense ambition to sever her ties to the past, living day to day in an almost hypnotic delusion, Riven tried to cast the battle and the loss it carried out of her mind. Finally, the Windblade Master was able to successfully break the blade as per Riven's wishes, and she watched as the steel she hated so much shattered in an explosion of violent runic magic.
She gets it
Nice.
back though, right?
However, there was no solace to be
How
found
did she
in the
get it
broken
back? It's
pieces.
destroyed.
I feel like it's got to be reforged at some point, right? Maybe
What
not.
I'm thinking is they're gonna give they're gonna give her a new sword.
Mm, yeah. I like the
Not
other
with
sword. The
like
other sword's
Nexus
fucking badass.
runes. It was badass.
Intensifying Riven's feeling of helplessness and crushing her consciousness under the weight of her sin. Still in a maddened state, Riven scrambled to collect the pieces of the blade, all except one that she couldn't find. Using the runic explosion from the sword as cover, Riven fled the village without even a word to the Elder. Feeling no atonement or severance, the sword was still her weight to carry. What would bring her peace? A question that weighed on her mind as heavily as the loss of her brothers and sisters. Overwhelmed with a feeling of guilt, Riven left into a self-imposed exile as she had much to atone for. After enough time had passed and with nowhere else to go, Riven returned to the same village. There, she was taken in by a pair of Ionian farmers, Arsa and Shava Conte, who were stricken with the grief of losing their 2 sons to the brutality.
Where did she go then? She just left for a while and then came back and was like,
Was
all
just
right, I'm back.
wandering through the
Yeah.
forest, I guess.
Yeah.
Or something.
Brutality of the Noxian War. Unable to bear a grudge, the farmers were forgiving of the Noxian and refused to live in grief. They could sense her remorse and saw her now as their adopted daughter. Looking to help those who had shown her love and acceptance, Riven worked the fields and learned the ways of the Ionian people. However, her presence still caused some unease, and certain members of the community could only recognize her as an outsider. So naturally, when a village elder was found dead, Riven was a prime suspect.
Oh,
Under this
no
suspicion,
way she
Riven
would've
was
done that.
taken in by Ionian soldiers and learned that the elder that had died was the same one who had shattered her blade. Under the watchful eye of the council and jury of
okay, that is pretty suspicious.
Yeah. And do you remember how one of the pieces of her sword was missing?
Yeah.
I'm thinking someone else used that to either kill the elder, or they just put it around. That way they thought
Set her up.
no. Yep.
the village, Riven's allegations were laid out for her. Adamant that her daughter was innocent, her mother Shava spoke up, accusing a recently disgraced swordsman of the village, Yasuo, as the murderer. When Ionians discovered the elder dead, Yasuo was nowhere to be found, which painted a very guilty picture. Murmurs in agreement broke out among the observers. Growing up,
Yasuo is one of the champions. He's the one that has like the wind sword and stuff. You've seen him. He's the older guy, or he wears like blue. He has a sword. You've seen him in the past on other.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yasuo
Then in
had
one of the
been
videos
nothing
we
but
saw him
trouble,
like a little older.
Yes.
Okay.
and his reputation in the village was shaky at best. As a final query into Riven's innocence, her shattered blade was brought out and laid before the council. Every piece of the blade except one. While examining the fractured pieces before him, a small man passed through the crowd with his hand in his robe. He was
He's
the
got the
adept of
final
the
piece.
village, a preparer of bones and remains for burial once an Ionian had passed. As he approached the center of the courtroom, the judge's gaze was fixed on him, and the crowd looked on in anticipation. The man slowly unveiled a swathe of cloth from the pocket of his robe that draped over a small object. He approached the bench as he unfolded
missing
each
piece.
wing of the swathe, revealing a piece of sharp, dark steel. The judge questioned what the adept was doing, to which he responded that when he was preparing Aldasuma's body, he had found the steel in his neck, the only evidence that could have caused his death. Intrigued, the judge picked up the piece of the dark steel and ran his finger across its
And it
sharpest
matched,
edge.
of course.
His eye passed from the steel to the tip of the sword, where a vacant hole remained, and slotted the piece back where it come from. The courtroom filled with a unified,
Immediately.
resonant gasp from the onlookers, but, realizing what had happened when the elder broke her blade, Riven's "I'm guilty" was louder. She stared at the now completed blade. Suddenly, a familiar energy filled the atmosphere around her. The black runes of her sword began to glow green, and energy flowed between the pieces, sparking with a familiar, violent instability. The sword began to hum with increasing intensity before coming to a splitting crescendo.
What?
Riven, at the top of her voice, commanded the courtroom to get down. Everyone in the room leapt to the floor or used whatever they could for cover. In a runic explosion of steel and energy, the whole room was blitzed. The piercing sound of the explosion was only matched by the screams of the Ionians.
Was it the sword that blew up? And then
It was a sword.
do you
Now
think
I don't
that
know
was a
if the sword
setup?
reactivated itself. I don't know. What I'm thinking two things. One is based on whatever it was happening to her, the sword reacted because it had some sort of connection, or the Noxians are close enough that they could activate the sword
Yeah, it seems
instead
like
of like a bomb.
it was implanted with a bomb or something. Wonder if
Yeah.
they're gonna tell us what it was.
Through some kind of miracle, there was no injury, except the courtroom that now lay in shambles. The Ionians all rose to their
course.
feet, with every gaze fixed on Riven, who was scanning the room lest she had to add another dead to her guilty conscience. After collecting himself and checking to make sure none were injured, the judge brought the room to order. The entirety of the village was just witness to the power Riven's blade possessed, but also to its instability. Her parents, who were so sure of her innocence, began to sob, only able to stand through the support of the other's embrace. The judge closed the hearing, announcing they were to decide an appropriate punishment in the coming day while Riven was shackled to the courtroom wall.
Jesus.
The observers and Shava, who was too overcome with shock and uncertainty, left for the day, leaving Riven and her father in the trial room alone. Not long after the last observer had left, Asa ushered over to Riven, who was slunk against the wall battling her conviction. Despite the evidence laid out in the courtroom and his daughter's admission to guilt, Asa retained that he was certain of her innocence. With such assurance, he unshackled Riven.
Huh.
In unison with the shackles hitting the stone floor, another cling of steel rang out in the trial room.
What?
Riven jerked upward, her only thought to protect her father. Her trained and soldier-like alertness brought her attention to a hooded figure entering the room, the
Ooh,
tip of their blade scraping the floor behind them.
Jesus.
Slowly looking up at her, the hood that once shrouded the figure's face revealed a
Shit,
man with a
that
scar
guy
that
looks
spanned from
so
cheek to
dope.
cheek over the bridge of his nose. Asa knew who it was, the man his wife had accused of being the murderer. It was Yasuo. Yasuo
Oh,
Ah,
Yasuo was here, bro.
damn.
That looks fucking insane. I love
Yo.
his shoulder pad. Oh my god. He's the one that I wonder if he
That's
actually
probably
did
the
it then.
thumbnail, bro.
It's gotta be.
like Riven was a student of Elder Suma's wind techniques and had been assigned by the council to be his personal bodyguard. As the war crept closer to the village, Yasuo's fellow students and brother Yone were tasked with meeting the enemy forces while he was to protect the Elder. Hearing war drums nearby, Yasuo was frustrated that he was the only one left in the village while his brother and fellow students risked their lives.
Damn.
Against orders, Yasuo left to join his comrades, only to return and be met by Ionian spears and handcuffs. The man he was meant to be protecting, Elder Suma, was dead.
Oh.
Accused of the murder, Yasuo fled, searching for a way to prove his innocence. Upon learning there was a foreign Noxian girl
So
in
he
his
didn't do
village,
it
he
either.
sought to return as he sensed a way to clear his name, only to be met by the one he had wished to avoid the most, his own brother,
Yone.
Morally bound to
Oh, they had
return his
beef?
brother to justice, Yone had set out to look for him. With complete belief in Yasuo's conviction, the two drew their blades.
Oh, he broke the sword. Yo.
Jesus.
After a heated exchange, the duel was over in a flash, with Yasuo cutting down his older brother in self-defense. Now,
Oh.
seeking vengeance, he had returned to the village to challenge Riven. Her guilt was his innocence, and he wasn't going to let his brother's death be for nothing.
It wasn't Riven either, though. So that's why he's showing up to Riven, because he thinks she's guilty as well.
Yep.
I wonder who actually did it, though.
LeBlanc.
Unveiling
Or
the
was
hilt piece
Yone.
of Riven's broken blade beneath his cloak, Yasuo thrust it towards her in a trail of sparks across the courtroom
shit.
floor. Faster than she had anticipated, he lashed at her. Suddenly recognizing the imminent danger, Riven squeezed the hilt of her weapon and the pieces of the blade flew into the room in a whirlwind of runic magic,
Holy
tripling
fuck.
the size of the broken sword in an instant.
That's the way the sword looks like in the video game. It's
Just
so
like
fucking
that?
sick, yeah.
It's not like a one piece,
No,
it's
it's
like
broken up
multiple
like
pieces
that. Yeah,
floating.
it's so sick, right?
No.
Yeah.
It is very sick.
The two leapt at one another, clashing with the full power of their blades. The clang was resonant, and the swords locked. Recognizing the similarity between their techniques and Riven's lack of murderous intent, questions began forming in Yasuo's head. Harnessing the power of the Elder, Yasuo channeled wind into his katana, which surged forth to meet Riven's shattered blade at full power, ripping the tip piece from the sword that had taken Elder Suma's life.
Oh.
As if shot from a rifle, the piece exploded from Riven's
No.
sword, flying in the direction
Oh,
of
no,
her
no, no,
father,
no,
who was
no, no,
watching
no, no,
from
no, no, no,
across
no.
the room. In an instant, Yasuo reacted, leaping across the room
Oh,
faster
nice.
than the wind and slicing his blade in front of Asa as if to open a rift.
Holy fuck.
A violent gale
Good.
spewed forth, forming a wall of wind, and the dark sliver of steel came to a complete stop, hitting the ground. Realizing the volatility of the runic blade's energy, it became apparent that Riven hadn't meant to kill the Elder, and she too was battling with a past too painful to bear. Hearing the commotion, a mass of Ionian officials and soldiers led by the judge burst into the courthouse, just barely witnessing the end of the exchange. It was after seeing the instability of Riven's
Shit.
runic magic and Yasuo's disposition to save innocent life rather than take it that the Ionian officials departed, suddenly unsure of the outcome of their decision tomorrow. The following day, the officials and villagers convened in the shell of the courthouse. Riven stood before them, ready for any sentence that would help her atone for the past. Her father and mother watched on from the stands in anxious anticipation. Wishing for no more bloodshed, Riven was sentenced to years of servitude to the village, beginning with the reparation of the courthouse and mending the devastation the Noxian War had caused.
It wasn't her fault either. Man. I guess this was why the lore of Riven is brutal. Feel bad for her.
Yasuo was granted a pardon. Riven reveled in serving her family and the village, finally living in peace and getting a chance at repentance for the damage she had caused the people who had taken her in.
Jeez.
He didn't
One
cause it,
afternoon,
though.
Asa was to go to a neighboring village.
I mean, she was part of Noxus, who was trying to invade Ionia originally.
Yeah, but she kind of deserted.
Yeah. Yeah.
For farming supplies, and he asked Riven to accompany him on the road. What better protection than a trained warrior who wielded a sword bigger than most humans? While on their way back, a sudden jolt in the cart Riven was sleeping in woke her up. She sat up sleepily to see her father engaged in a conversation with an older Ionian woman. Riven could faintly make out her features through the light cast by a flickering fire that was lit next to the road. The woman, known as Muramat, was a mender, an Ionian capable of feeling the energy of things and binding broken
Is
pieces.
she also in the game?
After introductions
No.
over a meal, Muramat asked
don't
to see
think.
Riven's blade. While tracing the runic patterns on the steel under Riven's careful watch, it began to hum, and Muramat suddenly collapsed. Once she finally came to, she explained
It's
to Riven and
cursed.
Asa that she'd seen a vision through the runic magic. Someone was coming for her sword.
What?
Without a moment's hesitation, Riven and Asa
Noxus.
made haste back to the village. But despite the old woman's revelation,
LeBlanc.
months passed. Normal, uneventful months. On a normal morning, as Riven prepped the field for a day of work ahead, her father shakily made his way over to her. His head was down, and Riven could see tears gently rolling down his cheeks. Asa took Riven's hand and looked up at her.
The
tears
mother.
did not stop, but his solemn expression turned into a warm smile. Shava had died in her sleep, succumbing to her age. Still bearing the pain of losing yet another family member, Riven made her way onto the field to let her calloused hands distract her from the ache in her heart.
The blade.
As she stopped for a break, Riven looked up at the sky and took a deep breath, silently thanking her departed mother for a second chance. Gripping the
Oh.
tool to continue her field work, she focused to unearth a rock that was in the way of the plough on a crop line, but this focus was interrupted as Riven heard a familiar rhythmic thumping. Looking out across the
Noxus.
field, Riven's gaze was met with a small party of Noxian soldiers. They'd come for her.
Yep.
Riven raced inside and told her father to hide.
Is
If
he
the
gonna fight
Noxians
him?
were to discover Asa, they
Yeah.
may use him against her. As they came
Fucking
closer,
big
Riven
ass
was
sword.
unable to comprehend what she was seeing. It was her sisters.
Aren't they the
Fury
three friends?
Marit,
Yes.
The
Arel,
three
and Kenneth,
mercenaries?
with two others she didn't recognize.
Yep.
Walking back to the middle of the field, she felt her lungs tighten in anxiety. After a reconciliation with her sisters, Riven learned one of the parties she didn't recognize was a young squire, Aerith.
Oh, so they're still like being friendly. They're not fighting.
Yep.
The other woman leading the group was Tifalengi of the Black Rose, a formidable rune mage who answered only to LeBlanc herself.
Jesus.
It was then that Tifalengi made her intentions clear. Leaning on a runic blade of her own, Tifalengi announced that Riven was to return to the capital to face punishment for abandonment. While the terms of her imprisonment were being explained, the
It makes
squire
sense.
Aerith was looking around for Riven's sword. Only able to find shards of the blade in the barn, Aerith looked under the house in the cellar. On
Saw the
accident,
dad.
he found Asa hiding and presented him to Tifalengi outside, along with the dark steel shards he had just found. Aerith was unable to present the blade itself, but his discovery of Asa was enough for Tifalengi to force Riven's hand. If she did not bring her the blade, Asa would die. Aerith, watching on, couldn't believe his discovery could cost this innocent man his life. Riven, who would rather die
Jesus.
than let harm befall her father, went into the house to retrieve the sword. Tifalengi, growing impatient, revealed the group weren't there for Riven at all, but only for the runic blade,
fuck.
the weapon of Noxus. To them, she was a dispensable traitor and would die, along with her father. Riven's war sisters, shocked at this revelation, disputed against Tifalengi, who said if they didn't help her kill Riven, they would die alongside her. To this threat, Marit, the masked sister, sided with Tifalengi. Gripping the hilt of her broken sword, runic energy began to fill the blade, and the pieces Tifalengi was holding ripped through her fingers to rejoin the hilt, leaving her hand bloody.
God.
As the air filled with the crack of unnatural
Oh.
energy and the scream of the rune mage, a fight ensued between the masked Marit and exiled Riven. With her fully formed sword and her father's life on the line, Riven slayed her sister, pinning her to a tree with the massive blade. After an extended and heartbreaking
Christ.
fight, an exhausted Riven is shocked when the rune mage tore the hilt from her grasp with magic.
The rune mage just gripped it away from her like that?
Yep.
Holy shit. Why didn't she do that to begin with? Why did she let her fight?
I don't know.
In retaliation, both Arel and Tenef charged at Tifalengi,
Oh.
sensing it would be their sister's
too
demise if
strong.
they did not. Now possessing both runic blades along with her powerful magic, the sisters
Jesus!
were helpless as Tifalengi
Final boss Tifalengi with the double runic blades, bro. Holy shit.
Overpowered.
suspended all three of them in the air with a prison spell.
Oh.
Knowing they were dead for treason, a sense of helplessness washed over them. They had lost. Tifalengi, with all three suspended in the air, sentenced them to death.
What?
Riven closed her
Jesus.
eyes, accepting her fate. Maybe this will lead her to peace. Suddenly, she hit the ground, springing to her feet in a daze. The spell was broken. She looked up to
What?
check on her sisters, but their gaze was
Her
fixed on
father?
what was in front of them.
Or Yasuo?
Aerith, the squire boy, had plunged his sword through Tifalengi's back, driving it out through her chest and heart.
Ooh.
Shocked, Riven, Arel, and Tenef watched as the rune mage's
They can
body
never
slid off the
return.
blade and crumpled to the ground. Recognizing he had unknowingly sided with a greater evil, Aerith had made a decision. This wasn't the Noxus he knew. Despite what had happened, the sisters couldn't return empty-handed or they too would be sentenced by Noxus. They had no choice.
They're gonna take her.
Not wanting them to bear her punishment or put her
Yeah.
father at further risk, Riven agreed to return, much to the objection of others.
Yeah, she doesn't want the full freaking threat of Noxus coming down on her father. She already lost her mother.
Yep. She
Jesus.
just rather go away.
Asa.
I guess I would do the same.
Upon returning to the capital, the party claimed Tifalengi was lost to Ionia, but their captive was there for sentencing.
Mm.
Facing the Noxian war court, Riven was to serve a life sentence at the Fleshing Arena.
This is, remember we saw this. This was in the one
of the trailers?
the one of the trailers. Yeah. She was
Was it
fighting
the-
inside the gladiator arena.
It's not bite marks. It was before that, right?
I think it was Bite Marks, the newest one.
Was it?
I'm pretty
Was it
sure it
there?
was. Yeah.
It could be.
Common form of
Yeah, I
gladiatorial
remember this.
entertainment run by Draven, the glorious executioner of Noxus.
Because he was sitting there
But
watching.
Riven's tale doesn't end there.
God damn. Here it is.
Oh shit!
Holy fuck. Dude, that was fucking incredible.
Because you know what? It was great to watch it on the trailer,
Yeah.
but now like getting the backstory, how she got there, like her story is really tragic, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when she thinks she's found peace, it is not. I mean, she there's always something happening.
Yeah. Nothing good. It's constantly just like life's just throwing her shit. I guess she can't
Thing
win.
after another.
Yeah, I feel bad for her, and that was just like an incredible story. The Rival told it very well. The animations were awesome to watch. I love the comic book flip through style, and then that transition into the actual trailer at the end was fucking awesome.
Did you see that coming?
No. And,
No,
well,
I did because it was like the one
panel was
God,
super high def.
the one panel. Or like, wait a second, that looks like a 3D.
Yeah, and then it transferred. That was really cool. I enjoyed that a lot. Thanks for recommending that. It was fun to watch.
Great video.
Yeah,
For sure, great video.
Thank you everyone for watching a League of Legends movie, The Lore of Riven, with us. If you enjoyed it, please remember to leave a like and subscribe.
See you in the next one.
Bye everyone.
Bye.